They were the number one seed in the AFC last year, but with a banged up running back, new wide receivers, and a potentially regressing quarterback, can the Tennessee Titans repeat the success they had last year, or could they potentially miss the playoffs? Stay tuned to find out. What is going on, guys? It is Connor, the co-host with the most, back with another 2022 NFL team preview, this time looking at the Tennessee Titans. We're doing 2022 team previews for all 32 NFL teams, so if we haven't gotten to your team yet, then stay patient. We'll get to them eventually. But this time out, we're going to be looking at the number one seed from the AFC last year, the Tennessee Titans. Zach and Eric's favorite team, of course. Just kidding, guys. But yeah, the Tennessee Titans were the top team in the AFC last year. They got eliminated in the divisional round by the Cincinnati Bengals. So definitely going to be interesting to see how they do this year, as a lot of people thought they were a Super Bowl contender last year, but that may not be the case this year. So obviously the big story with the Tennessee Titans this year is going to be Derrick Henry. He, had the injury last year that limited him to only playing about half the season. He did come back in that playoff game against the Cincinnati Bengals, but he just really didn't look like himself at all. Like, every time he got the ball, he was doing okay, but he didn't look like the Derrick Henry that we all know, the one that's running over people and, getting 6 yards a carry and rushing for over 200 yards. He wasn't the usual looking Derrick Henry. This is a guy who just the season before rushed for over 2,000 yards, and, he was on pace for that again this season before the injury. Seemed like one of the reasons why he got hurt was just a big case of the Titans overworking him. He had a huge workload. They really relied on his run game to set up the play action with Ryan Tannehill. And like I said, it was just a case of a running back being overworked. Running backs, they're probably the most injury-prone players in the league, especially when they have high workloads. It's just, they're bound to get hurt at some point, and Derrick Henry finally got hurt. So the key for the Tennessee Titans this year is obviously going to be the health of Derrick Henry. When he's healthy, the Titans are one of the best teams in the league. But when he's not looking like himself, the Titans, in my mind, could actually be one of a bottom tier team without Derrick Henry. Ryan Tannehill, he's not the kind of quarterback that's going to carry your team. I'm going to get to this in a second about what's going on with the wide receivers and the pass catchers in Tennessee, but case in point, without Derrick Henry, the Titans are going to miss the playoffs. If he's healthy, I think the Titans, I think they're worse than they were last year. So if he plays well and he's, healthy and the old Derrick Henry, they'll make the playoffs. I don't think they'll be the number one seed in the AFC again. I think that'll go to probably someone potentially someone from the AFC West or someone from the AFC North or the Bills. I don't think the Titans will be the number one seed. In my mind, if he's fully healthy and he looks the way he did last year, the Titans can win the AFC South and at least get the 4 seed. If he's fine and he's good but not quite his old self, I think the Titans probably get a wild card spot. But if he's looking like a shell of his former self, the Titans are going to miss the playoffs for the first time in a few seasons. And I know that'll make Zach and Eric very happy, but, obviously not good for Titans fans that Derrick Henry, if he doesn't come back and perform the way they all expect him to. So that's going to be the big thing to look for the Tennessee Titans. And something that's kind of, I guess, connected to that in a way, looking at the offense for the Titans, is going to be the wide receiver situation in Tennessee now. And a move that baffled all three of us on the podcast, and obviously it made Zach and Eric jump up and down with joy because none of us can really figure out why they traded A.J. Brown to the Philadelphia Eagles. It's a great trade for the Philadelphia Eagles. Eric already talked about it in his Eagles preview that, pairing A.J. Brown with Devontae Smith was a really fantastic move for the Philadelphia Eagles, and all they had to do was basically just swap their pick with the Tennessee Titans in the first round, or just give up that first round pick. So, they really didn't have to give up anything at all to get, a Pro Bowl receiver on their roster, while the Titans just traded him away for basically nothing. And, it's one of those things that's the kind of move that you would expect if the Titans were going to go into a rebuild, but they're definitely not going into a rebuild. They're still a playoff contender and wanting to win now, so just an all-around kind of baffling move as to why they traded him away, but this has been talked about at length. But obviously, so they drafted Treylon Burks to be his replacement, and, in my mind, Treylon Burks was kind of a reach when they drafted him. It was one of those, like, okay, the receivers were going in the draft, like Olave and London, and I don't know why I can't remember his name. Wilson, that's the other one. Like, they had all gone off the board. So the Titans really wanted to grab a receiver before they all went off the board. And in my mind, they just reached for Treylon Burks. Like, he's obviously a first-round talent receiver, but in my mind, he was more of a late first round rather than a mid-first round. And like I said, I think they were getting him just because it was like, oh, we traded A.J. Brown, we really need a receiver, let's grab him now. So we'll see if that works out. They also traded for Robert Woods from the LA Rams, which, in my mind was another, like, good move for the LA Rams. Maybe not as much for the Titans. Like, Robert Woods, in my mind, I don't know if he's ever had the talent to really be a true number one receiver, and that's what he's going to be asked to do in Tennessee. He's going to be asked to be the number one guy because Burks, they're not expecting him to be the number one guy, so Woods is going to have to be the number one guy. He was always more of like a receiver by committee. He did really well in LA playing next to Cooper Kupp, and at one time when Brandon Cooks was there, he did a good job playing next to Brandon Cooks. He was never, like I said, a true number one receiver, and that's what he's going to be asked to do here, and I'm just not sure he's going to be able to live up to that expectation. He's a good receiver, and he's got a large skill set, but he's not a number one receiver. And Treylon Burks is a rookie. He's a raw rookie. We don't know how he's going to perform. He wasn't one of the top prospects. It wasn't like the Titans got, like Garrett Wilson or Drake London, and we're thinking, oh, okay, that's going to be a really good receiving duo. We don't know what we're going to get with Treylon Burks. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this wide receiver dynamic works out. Obviously, they also don't have Julio Jones anymore. They released him in the offseason, which that, in my mind, probably was a bit of a good move because Julio was kind of a shell of his former self and, really was kind of past his prime. So that, in my mind, was a good move. But, it's just one of those things that if Derrick Henry isn't playing the way he's going to play, I'm not sure Ryan Tannehill is really going to be able to get it going with this group of receivers. I felt a lot better when it was A.J. Brown and Corey Davis or A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. I feel a lot better about that situation, or if they still had A.J. Brown, and they managed to trade for Robert Woods. If they had A.J. Brown and Robert Woods, that would be fantastic, but instead they've got Robert Woods and Treylon Burks, so definitely going to be interesting for sure to see how the Titans perform on offense with these guys, which is also going to lead me to, the big question probably for the offseason, and maybe even they're going to evaluate it this season too, just the future for Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee. Now, he's got 2 years left on his contract this year and next season, and, a lot of people are seeing him as that, he's regressing. I don't think anyone ever really thought of him as, a true elite quarterback. He's never been an elite quarterback. He's always been able to piggyback off of the success that they've had with Derrick Henry in Tennessee. The Titans are the top. When Derrick Henry is playing at his peak, the Titans are the top team in the league at play action. All the teams are so scared of Derrick Henry that play action works perfectly, and he can make easy throws to usually wide open receivers or tight ends. So, if the Titans have to go to a more pass-heavy attack, then I don't think that's going to lead to success for them. I'm not a big believer in Ryan Tannehill. I think that, honestly, in some ways, I know a lot of people thought he's kind of overstayed his welcome in Tennessee because, he was basically tasked with being the one to lead them in the playoffs when Henry was hurt, and he didn't really do that good of a job. He was basically Ryan Tannehill, just kind of your average, run-of-the-mill, he's like a measuring stick quarterback in my mind. Like one of those quarterbacks that if you're better than him, then you're a pretty good quarterback. But if you're worse than him, then you're a pretty bad quarterback. So he's kind of like that measuring stick quarterback in the NFL for me. And the Titans, of course, obviously, they drafted Malik Willis in the third round, the dual threat quarterback out of Liberty that a lot of people thought were going to go in the first round. A lot of people thought the Steelers were going to take him, myself included. I thought the Steelers were going to take him with their picks. So, I think the Titans really got a steal in him. Like I said, he is a bit more of a project quarterback, which in some ways is good that Tannehill still has 2 years left on his deal. So Willis can play underneath him. He can, learn the NFL, learn the system. And then when the Titans inevitably move on from Tannehill, whether that's after this season or after the next season when his contract runs out, Willis can step in and take over the team, and he'll have that experience sitting behind a veteran QB. Obviously, there has been a little bit of tension here going to with Tannehill and Willis. Tannehill, they basically asked him about, what he thinks of Willis and how he's going to contribute to the development of Willis, and he basically gave the disgruntled veteran quarterback answer of, well, it's not my job to mentor him. I don't have to teach him anything. That's not my job. So clearly it doesn't seem like Willis is going to be getting any help from Tannehill. I'm sure he'll still learn stuff from Tannehill, but, this isn't going to be a mentor-student sort of relationship that the two have. It's more so going to be Willis is going to have to learn some stuff on his own and basically just learn by watching Tannehill play and watching this Titans offense and being in practice. So, in my mind, I definitely, like I said, no question at least that once Tannehill's contract runs out after 2 years, that he's gone. Like, if I'm the Titans, I'm not re-signing him after that. I'm moving to Willis or possibly another quarterback. But I honestly could see them trying to, trade him or get rid of him after this season, too, if he doesn't perform either. Like, I think Tannehill, he's definitely in a hot seat. Like, his seat's getting warm in the quarterback spot in Tennessee. Because if they had a lot of faith in Tannehill, I don't think they would have drafted Malik Willis. Again, he was a third-round quarterback, so it's not like they took him in the first round to kind of be like, hey, your seat's really under threat. But, that's kind of one of those, okay, like, you got to start performing maybe a little bit better, or maybe we're going to go over to this guy because, we didn't spend a draft pick on him for nothing. And like I said, a lot of people saw him as the best QB in the draft class. Now, although the QB draft class was weak, a lot of people still considered Malik Willis to be the best. So definitely going to be interesting to see what they do with Ryan Tannehill. In my mind, I think he plays out both years of his contract. I don't think I see them getting rid of him after this year unless he just plays abysmally, which I don't think he'll play abysmally. I don't think he'll play great. Like I said, I think he'll just kind of play his usual average sort of role. Like, okay, I apologize if you hear thunder outside. There's a thunderstorm about to happen. But yeah, I think he'll just kind of play his average role, his average, I'm here, I can manage the team, we can win games, but I'm not going to win you a Super Bowl or anything. So, in my mind, Tannehill, he's like that quarterback that's good for like a divisional round playoff run, and then that's it, and then you're out. So that's my thoughts on that. So looking at the Titans' schedule here, now obviously they do have some easy games on the schedule, thrown in with some harder ones, of course, because they do have to go against the AFC West this year, so of course, all those teams are looking to be really good. But they do have the fortunate distinction of they get to play against the NFC East. So those should hopefully be easier games for them, which is why, they have a lot of winnable games on the schedule. Like outside of the AFC West, the only real tests on their schedule, in my mind, would be the Buffalo game, basically the Buffalo game, and then that stretch of 3 games between Green Bay, Cincinnati, and Philly. I think are going to be the really tough part of their schedule. Because, they have to start with playing the Chiefs on November 6th. So that stretch between November 6th and December 4th is really the tough part of their schedule. The Colts are obviously going to be a good team too, so it's going to be interesting to see how they do against them. But in my mind, the key game, for them is honestly going to be that Week 7 game against the Colts because, let's say they drop that first game to the Colts on October 2nd in Week 4. If they drop this game, the Week 7 game to the Colts, then in my mind the division is lost at that point because it's going to come down to the Colts and the Titans. The Jags and the Texans. The Texans are the biggest dumpster fire of an organization in the league right now. And the Jags are still in true rebuild mode, and in my mind, I don't see the Jags really getting over 5 wins this year. So, sorry, Zach and Eric, but I just don't see the Jags doing anything really good this year. So, in my mind, those are 4 wins for both the Colts and the Texans. Maybe the Colts might lose to the Jags at home when the Jags are at home just because they tend to do that for some reason, but the Titans aren't the Colts. The Titans have owned the Jacksonville Jaguars in the Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill era. And, of course, like I said, the Texans are a huge dumpster fire, so no problem there. But, yeah, that Week 7 game against the Colts is going to be the big key, in my opinion, for them, that if they lose that game, as well as if they would have already lost the Week 4 game, then they've lost the division. That's going to be the race for the division. And they really need to win that game at home because I could very easily see them losing that game on the road And if they lose the game at home too, that's pretty much it for the division in my mind. So that's the key game for them on their schedule. But like I said, it's a pretty balanced schedule. There's a fair amount of easy games thrown in there. Like I said, the games against the Texans and Jags, along with games against Washington and the Giants, but definitely some tougher opponents as well, given that they were a division winner last year. So they have to play the Bills and the Bengals, and they get the unfortunate distinction of drawing the Green Bay Packers as their extra NFC opponent. So going to be interesting. The over-under for them is set at 9.5 this year. Last year, the over-under was set at 9, and the odds makers got that completely wrong last year because the Titans did finish 12-5, and like I said at the beginning, we're the number 1 seed in the AFC. In my mind, I'm going to have to go under on this for the Tennessee Titans, just because I don't see Derrick Henry returning to his former glory. I don't see Ryan Tannehill being able to carry this team, and I'm going to say that the Titans are going to finish 8-9, and they're going to miss the playoffs. I think the Colts are going to easily make their way to an AFC South crown. I think the Colts take both games, Week 4 and Week 7. Like I said, the Titans, they pretty much have 6 guaranteed wins on their schedule, but against all these other teams, I mean, they could maybe steal one from Denver at home. They could maybe steal one from Vegas or steal one from Dallas at home, but other than that, I think they lose to the Chargers, they lose to the Chiefs, they lose to Buffalo for sure going on the road. Buffalo really wants their revenge on Tennessee after last year, so, I mean, I just don't see the Titans getting over 8 wins. I think an 8-10 record is, or not 8-10, 8-9 record is what they're going to have, and like I said, they're going to miss the playoffs, so thank you guys so much for watching. If you're a Titans fan, hopefully you liked this episode. I know I didn't exactly give a nice outlook for your team, but, hopefully you still like the content in it. If you disagree with me, make sure to let me know down in the comments down below. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit that notification bell so you get notified when all of our preview videos come out, especially if the preview video for your team is coming out, you don't want to miss it. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at clutchcrewsports, and I will see you guys next time.